Hey everybody, it's Casual Boops coming at you with another video, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe. Anyways, today we're going to be covering the STRV 103B, the Tier 10 Swedish tank destroyer on the tech tree, of course, and it's I like to call it the King Cheese Wedge because it's the obviously the shape, and then the top of the tree being what it is. Anyways, so just a real quick tech tree overview. They're not very good. Most of them are not very good. The tier 5 is blah. The tier 6 is forgettable and made of paper, and you can get penned by just about everything. The tier 7 starts to get a little bit better. Mostly these things feature punchy guns and not very good armor. And then tier 8 is where everything changes. You get the siege mechanic where you can run around. You have travel mode, and you can press a button to run around. Sorry, you're in travel mode, you can press a button to set up, and your mobility goes to crap, but then your gun becomes amazing. And the UDES gets it, and also amazing camouflage values. And the STRV S1 is also excellent, gets the same thing. Then tier 9 gets an even better gun, and slightly better armor, and then the 103B gets an even better gun, and it just kind of builds from there. So I think the tank is good at what it does. The STRV 103 is very good at what it does, but it's definitely not for everyone. I don't really care for it in the game, like in random battles, but it can be very effective. I'll just say it like that. So the tank itself, the high points, right? First of all, this, if you'll notice, these stats just like this don't really appear to be that excellent, right? They're just okay. But you have to click this button in to enter siege mode, and then all of a sudden you get everything is different, right? So your top speed goes to 10, reverse speed goes to 10. But this is why I always recommend. You know what? We'll get to the equipment later. But basically, what this tank is all about is DPM and penetration. Your gun is an absolute laser beam. These traverse. It doesn't really have a turret, but like the stats on this are the best in the game. You don't need snapshot. You don't need smooth ride, because these things, when you're set up to shoot, they can't get any smaller. So this is just what it is, and they're excellent. So you turn the turret, and it's just always laser beamed in, and the final penetration or the final dispersion is also excellent. Yeah. So the gun is an absolute laser beam, and it's always aimed in, and the penetration, the standard rounds, is 308, which is, again, very good, especially given the accuracy that you have. And then, this is a little bit weird, when you switch to premium penetration, or premium, you get 350 rounds of penetration. Sorry. When you switch to premium, you get 350 millimeters of penetration, but actually your shell velocity goes down just a hair, which is weird. I don't know, it's some kind of balancing. It's what they do to balance it, I guess, or whatever, but... anyways, it's a very unique tank, right? And so I guess you don't really necessarily, you only get 50 rounds of ammo, which sounds like a lot, but when you're pumping out rounds as fast as this thing is capable of pumping them out, it actually goes pretty quick. It's fairly quick when it's in travel mode, and I broke it. It's fairly quick when it's in travel mode. Here's what we'll do. We'll do this is in travel mode. This is in firing mode. Okay, so when you're in firing mode, you'll notice that you get very limited traverse. Basically, this thing moves its whole... The gun is built into the hull, so it moves the entire hull to steer and to aim the gun. And so because of that, if you ever get tracked in one of these things, you basically can't hit anything. The gun arc is so narrow that you're basically done. But... It's one of the things about this. If you're in siege mode, if you're in shoot mode, you can use binoculars to extend your view range, and you can still rotate, and it won't break the view range. So what I like to do, equipment wise, we'll just get into the equipment zone here. It's all about the DPM, and you need this. In pub matches. You need the binoculars to spot for yourself, because you have ninja levels of camo, so you can sit in the bush. Put your binoculars up, and then go ahead and let's see. You definitely need a turbo on this thing, because then your speed in siege mode goes up pretty substantially. Like going from 10 to 14 is huge. Going from 10 to 12 backwards is also huge. This is a game changer. So you need these things, and so you can be in a bush sitting there with 400 meters of 450 base view range, and you put some camo paint on there and so on. You got 45 percent camo rating, which is just insane. So you are the ninja, and and you then don't even have to work very hard to get almost 4,000 DPM. So it's just, there are a lot of good things about the tank. And yeah, I guess armor-wise, it's a very peculiar beast, right? Because it's shaped like a cheese wedge, hence the name. That's what I call it. But the armor is very thin, right? It's only got 50 millimeters in these certain areas and 20 on the top and so on. And yeah, all this stuff on the side doesn't actually count as armor. This is the armor, right? This bit here. And this is really important. This is 10 on the side, right? Or sorry, 30 on the side and 10 millimeters of spaced armor on the tracks and so on. So this is key, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. So if you're looking at one of these things in game, you will see this. And if you're playing it right, you've got this fence. Acts like a heat shield here. So if you're shooting at this with something with heat, the heat will hit this fence and it will not penetrate. This is spaced armor, right? So what you have to do is you have to shoot the thing directly in the gun, or you have this tiny little cupola, which is hard to hit if you're seeing, if you see it from far off and you just see this. Good luck, right? Or if the person is not playing well, you can also see this lower plate is penable, depending on the angles that you get. But the visual model is a little bit weird, right? So it's going to be helpful for me to show you, right? So why this is relevant is if the tank is looking right at you, then you got a problem. But what you can do is you track it, and then you go to one side. And once you get to one side, if you just hit anywhere over here, like anywhere on the side of the tank, you'll overmatch, because this side armor itself is very thin. It doesn't look like a pen. It looks red because it's spaced armor in front of it, but it's very, very thin. You will overmatch this side armor as long as it doesn't auto bounce or something like that. So basically, if you're shooting one of these things and it's aiming off to your left, you hit it on the right side, you'll probably go in. If it's aiming off to your right, you hit it on the left side, it'll probably go in. Otherwise, I don't recommend shooting HE at these things because it just doesn't. There's just spaced armor kind of all over the thing. I don't really recommend that. But this is how you take one of those down. Or obviously, this is all just very well angled. So if you can happen to see if you're looking up at the thing, then easy. Or yeah. So armor wise, it's really it's weird, right? You can't really shoot heat at it. And if you don't have don't have a huge, like a 155, then you can't overmatch. So it can be, the armor can really work if if somebody's using the tank properly. Yeah. So great DPM, great gun stats. It can be fairly mobile, right? 50 top speed and pretty good terrain resistances and so on. I mean, the thing can get into cover really well, and it has really good camo. But it's also a little bit awkward because you have this setup time with the siege mode. So anyways, that's the tank and the line, and without further ado, we'll get into the replay. Alright, so today we're going to be following a aimbopter one-shot. I'm just going to call him one-shot. Playing in his STRV 103B on steps, which is, there's two RD, no light tanks, and there's tier 9s and 10s in the game. And you're going to have to just excuse the premium spam. I know One Shot doesn't like to mess around. For what it's worth, I think of what happens in this game could just as easily have been done with the standard rounds too, just because the standard rounds penetration is excellent. But anyways, it is what it is. This is just a good idea, or a good representation of what the tank is good at. So One Shot's going to start out coming down here to this position, which I like a lot, but it's very commonly used, and I will actually blind fire this position in artillery just because it's so commonly used. But the key here, it's really hard to be aggressive in your STRV tanks, because by the time you roll up to a corner and try to do things, it's very easy to get tracked, and then you can't aim, and then and before you know it, you can't you've been tracked twice, and then you're out of the game, right? So I have a really hard time playing these things. I think it's really hard to be, wow, what a shot. It's really hard to be consistent with these things, just because it's just the weird nature of not having a turret and so on. And well, you can see the CS that's unspotted must have blind fired this area. I don't think that One Shot is spotted. I think maybe that T30 behind him is spotted, and that's what's getting One Shot shot. But One Shot goes and moves up to this position here, which is really risky. But I think it works because the STRV has such good camouflage, and it's such a low-profile tank, right? So we're just able to plow shots into the T95 and aim for the cupola. let's see what we can see. But other tanks, like I think the T-30 moves up later on and tries to take the same position, and yeah, okay, so the 704 is moving forward behind one shot, and you can see this on the mini-map, and I don't think it works very well, right? So this is one of those positions that only really works when the tank is really small and has really good camouflage. Like, this is basically a STRV spot. Yeah, the 704 is getting tracked. But anyways, it's really hard to be aggressive in a STRV. And so for that reason, the times that an STRV works the best is on certain maps that allow it to use the camouflage. And it also, you kind of need a team that, like, loses, but doesn't lose so quickly that you can't farm damage, right? Those are the situations where this tank really shines. You'll see some monster replays sometimes where you see an STRV that gets like 10,000 damage because your team didn't win. They were losing, and they were losing slow enough that the enemy was pushing around the corner and allowing you to farm damage into your STRV. And those are the perfect scenarios, but that doesn't always happen. And so you can kind of see that's what's happening now, though. And that's why One Shot is able to just, sit here and farm these E50s as they push around, and the T95s as they push around. But as soon as our guys push around the corner, One Shot can't help them, right? So this is one of the things that's kind of frustrating about the STRV tanks, and one of the reasons I don't really care for them, because I like to be up front in the fight doing the things, and that's not really what this tank is for. This tank is definitely for, you can say, drinking some coffee, sitting on the red line, and plugging shots into the enemy. So, anyways, our team has spectacularly lost, and that TVP learned the right and the wrong way to approach this corner. And so, yeah, now, one thing that can also be done here, so obviously the STRV, as we mentioned before, has really, really good camouflage. So what One Shot can do is actually use this position to spot for the guys behind him. I don't think he's necessarily doing that, but that's one of the things. Like, STRVs can be the scout when they need to be, because they have good camouflage, and if you run binoculars, then you have good view range as well. But right now you need to be using bush mechanics a little bit differently. And again, they're not, we want to, I think the T95 might have a big enough caliber gun to shoot One Shot and overmatch. And the people, like the artillery, are shooting at One Shot, but I think that's because the T30 was the one that moved up behind One Shot and actually was close enough to be spotted and also get shot and get splash on One Shot. What an interesting player. Yes, if you have somebody that is trying to work camouflage and work a bush line, you should never get right behind them, because you're just going to get that person and yourself shot. But you can see the penetration and the accuracy of this thing is good enough that One Shot's able to put around a few times directly into the tiny little lower plate of the T95. And we had some blind shots, so we're not really sure exactly what the damage is at, but you can see there's an enemy STRV up on the hill, and One Shot. Okay, so he shoots this side of the STRV because it was looking to the left, and that's why he went in there. He blind shotted the right side and then overmatched and went in. So if you ever have a situation like that, that's what you should do to take out the STRV. But we'll have to see at the end of the game whether any of those blind shots went in, and because there were a couple of STRVs, I'm sorry, a couple of E50s that kept poking around, and we shot at those guys blind, so we'll just have to see. But One Shot wisely decides that now is the time to get the heck out of there. There's not a whole lot going on. Our Kranvagn is going up the hill to do what Kranvagns do, and yeah, so that's the hard part about playing this tank, is knowing where to put yourself so that you can be useful, but not also get farmed by the enemy. And I'll admit, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of map knowledge, and I'm not even that good at it, to be honest. So One Shot's going to go here, put himself here where he can get a shot on that perch where the Leopard 1 is. And you can see, once he puts himself in firing mode, you move really slow, right? So now he's in travel mode, but his gun stats are crap. So that's what makes it a little bit awkward to be aggressive with this thing, is because of that time that it takes in between is really, really hard to... it's easy to get smoked while you're switching between travel mode and firing mode. And this is awkward, right? Oh, the Leopard 1 sees One Shot, but you can see, okay, that's unlucky. But you can see, like, as One Shot is moving around the gun, you can see how the the reticle doesn't move at all, right? Like, it's just basically a laser beam. It's always all the way moved in all the time. And One Shot's going to try to put himself in a position where he can help our standard B, or do something useful, because it looks like Kronwagen's getting pushed by the Grill 15, so we want to turn to do that. And the standard B has got a full health Waffentrager behind it. Like, this is not looking good. And the STRVs also get penned by Artie quite a bit, which you saw got splashed for 243 earlier. So this is dicey. This looks like we might lose this game, to be honest, if our team is, if their team is in any way competent. But One Shot's going to use these bushes, right? It's all about bushes with this tank. He's going to use this bush to sit and get spotted. That's bad. As soon as you're spotted in this thing, you definitely want to pull back behind cover and get safe, because you need to be, in order for the armor on this thing to work, you need to be facing the correct direction. And so, especially if you don't know who spotted you, like One Shot didn't, like we didn't know what spotted him, you don't know where to face your armor, and so it's probably not going to work. So, you know, that's the key, is you want to make sure that if you are going to try to use your, like, if you're going to poke your ridge, what am I trying to say here? Basically, you should try to be unspotted as often as you possibly can in an STRV tank. And if you're not, you ought to make sure that that's happening on your terms, right? You are choosing to be unspotted because you've shot in a bush, not somebody else has spotted you, right? And so that's the difference. So One Shot goes and uses the gun depression. That's the hydropneumatic suspension type thing that that this tank gets, and we've just got to wait. You really have to just, in these tanks, you really have to just wait for somebody to do something silly, and then you can punish them for it. So, there it is. One Shot takes the tracks off the CS-59, and we're almost loaded up again to do it again. And that's the power of the DPM of the STRV. Right, so the other thing is you need to move the hull to move, like, One Shot wanted to move up the hill. So you know, it's with anything that has a turret that's or I guess doesn't have a turret. Right, that's a pretty common issue where you're trying to move in one direction but look in the other, and it's very awkward. And so One Shot does not want to stay here because there's two tanks that have big giant guns, and I don't know what kind of gun. I think the Waffle has this small gun, so maybe it wouldn't be able to overmatch One Shot. But this isn't really a fight that you want to get into. It's a 1v2. That's not what STRVs are good at least not in close quarters. So One Shot is going to get safe, get out of there, and try to assist our standard B. I think he might have messed up there. Might have thought he had a shot on the artillery when he really didn't. Standard B cleans up the artillery, and now it's One Shot and a standard B versus what is essentially 2,000 hit points, more than 2,000 hit points of tank destroyers with big guns. So this could be a problem, and I think it's hard to tell exactly what One Shot's thinking here. I think maybe he's trying to set up a backstop where, like, if the enemy is going to flex, come around the backside and cap out on our base, then he will see them and he will be able to shoot them. And I think that's a solid plan. But we'll just wait and see. Okay, and so you can see in the chat here, the UDES 1516 says, you know, someone bait from cap and STRV shoot them on the way in, which is a solid plan. I think that's what One Shot's going to do here. So the standard B is, the idea here is the standard B is going to be on the cap and force the enemy tanks to come in and reset the cap, otherwise they'll lose. And meanwhile, One Shot will be in a position that's back and safe and has clear line of sight, and will be able to shoot those guys while they're trying to shoot the standard B. That's the plan. I think One Shot's going to get up in this little perch at like J5, and we'll see. Now, unfortunately, the standard B is kind of leaving, which isn't really what we want. But you know, we'll just see. Let's see what we can do with this. You can't necessarily depend on teammates in public games, in random games. But also, like I said, One Shot has excellent camo in the STRV, so it's unlikely that one of those tanks would spot him unless he were to shoot. without him spotting them first, or at least at the same time. So one shot's going to get up on this perch, which is a really good idea, and get into the firing mode before you crest the hill, so that way if you find something you can shoot it. And we'll wait and be patient. Bushes are your friend with the cheese wedge tanks. The Swedish tanks, all of them really rely on camouflage to stay alive, because the armor's not very thick. In the higher tiers, it's pretty well pretty well angled, but a lot of times you'll still get cheesed if you are spotted. So, just all about patience. It's all about setting up a trap in these tanks, right? And that's what the STRV is trying to do. It looks like the STRV is going to come around, and he's a little bit isolated, right? That's unfortunate, but this way at least he'll be able to spot from the backside, you know, from the 9-0 line, and then one shot will be able to at least, I don't know, get some shots if they try to come into our cap or something, or I guess it'd be the enemy cap. Gosh, where did we start in this game? Oh, but we have 2 minutes left, and we'll see what we can do. Oh, STRV ends up seeing the waffle. One shot puts a good shot in, and he's trying to run away. You can see gosh, the reload of this thing is just ridiculous. Look at one shot's just able to burn this guy down, put 3 shots in before you can even get down off the hill. It's just crazy. And that's really the strong suit of, that's one of the things that makes the makes the STRV so good, is that the DPM is just insane, right? 390 alpha on a tier 10 tank destroyer is really not that great, right? There's lots of tanks that have that or better, but this is one of those tanks where, like, it makes up for it because the DPM, it just cranks out shots. Like, I think if you fully kit your STRV out, you can get the reload down somewhere in like the 5.5 second range. Like, it's just ridiculous. And he was about to actually kill that Grill 15 with the permatrack, but luckily the Grill 15 had a Luckily the Grill 15 had a repair kit to save his life. So one shot, wow, really just shows the world how to play as aggressively as possible in an STRV. Alright, so at the end of the game, one shot ended up with 7,000 damage and 3 kills. That must have meant some of those blind shots must have gone in. That gets him a high caliber, but only a second class. And that's a pretty common thing with STRVs. So one shot got 908 base XP, and part of that's because he was shooting tanks that were lower tier than him, but a lot of that was also because he wasn't spotting his own targets. If you are spotting something and somebody else shoots it, they will get half of the XP that you earned for that damage. So that's why it's very common for STRVs to rack up tons of damage like one shot did, but then also not get a lot of assistance or not get a lot of experience for it, because you're not usually spotting your own damage in an STRV. Usually you're back in the bushes and not doing the spotting. So 908 base XP, even for a spectacular game like that. It's pretty common stuff. And then one shot paid through the nose for this one. He ended up costing himself 126,000 credits. This is this is the cost of the full premium spam. I don't necessarily think this is worthwhile or necessary. Like I said, the base penetration on the STRV is excellent. So you don't need to do what one shot did to be as effective as he was, I don't think. But anyways, that's the game, and congratulations to One Shot. Thanks for sending in the replay. And guys, if you liked what you saw, go ahead and don't forget to do the like and subscribe thing. And thanks. We'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.